Welcome to Life in the Fast Lane, your weekly NASCAR handicapping show. I'm your host, Steve Merril, and we are live Wednesday, June 17th at our normal time, 2 p.m. Eastern here on WagerTalk TV. I'm joined by my expert NASCAR handicappers, as always, Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com and Rocky Atkinson from SportsMemo.com. Just a reminder, we will be back next Wednesday, as always, this same time, 2 p.m. Eastern for your next episode. No bonus episode this week on Friday because we have one race this week, and that's Talladega on Sunday. It's a monster race, one of the biggest, most event-filled season. We'll get to how to handicap that. Have a recap of the previous race at Miami Homestead this Sunday. This show, we recap the previous race, give you our takeaways, some things Wednesday season, and Rocky Atkinson. When you go to either WagerTalk.com or Sportsman, promo code NASCAR 499. A race that sounds like the Talladega race, but it's actually a special price for the 5 months of NASCAR picks and analysis from these two experts. They've done here on the show with their analysis and their free winners, and you've seen what they've done. And now you can save $200 NASCAR season. It's not too late to get on board. I keep saying that each and every week. You keep missing winners, but it's because we have 5 months remaining. Normally it's $6.99 for a full season and then a discount for the rest of the NASCAR season. $4.99 for Rocky at sportsmemo.com. $99 for that special discount. Hey, speaking of Rocky, let me bring him in first. Rock, how did you do this past week, and what were your takeaways from Miami Homestead?
Well, I had a winner for Matt DiBenedetto at even money. Of course, that was my top play. The only play I released is a premium pick. Did win another free pick here on the show, barely, as Austin Dillon, minus 115, finished one spot ahead of Christopher Bell. Not really an action-packed race in Miami. The cautions were limited. Fairly clean race in most of the race. Denny Hamlin absolutely dominated the race. He won stage 1. He won stage 2. He won the race. Denny led 138 laps out of 267 to get his 40th career Cup win. Ryan Blaney led the second most laps with 7. One driver that stood out to me as having a good race was Rookie of the Year candidate Tyler Reddick. Reddick only led 3 laps, but he battled the leaders for a while, ended up with a 4th place finish. A couple of disappointing drivers I want to note, Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano. Logano ended up 2 laps down, but one point I want to make is he was racing Chase Elliott, who was in the lead and battling Denny Hamlin for the lead. He was in second, and Logano was not letting him pass. He was racing him hard, and I just think that Logano's got to be careful doing that. The shoe's going to be on the other foot at some point. He's going to be in Chase Elliott's shoes, and Chase Elliott's going to be in his shoes, and he's going to get raced hard, and he's not going to like it. So, that's pretty much what I got from Miami.
Yeah, Logano's an interesting situation. I was noticing that as well. Of course, they had the incident at where was it? Bristol, I guess. It was one of the recent short tracks because Martinsville was dominated by Truex. So I guess it was Bristol where Logano and Elliott were running 1-2 late in that race, and Elliott accidentally took Logano out racing hard. It wasn't intentional. He screwed both of their finishes that day. Keselowski found a way to win. But Logano had almost, you go down the list over his career, he's probably had an issue with almost all the top drivers at some point. I know with Hamlin, I think with Kyle Busch, maybe with Kenseth even back in the day. And it's ironic because guys I talk to on the outside world of NASCAR, they say he's one of the nicest down-to-earth guys you've ever met. He does a lot with charity. He's a good guy. But as we've said before, he comes off as kind of a wiener a lot of times on the track. And, I circled that as something, and as a handicapping factor, it's hard to predict when that'll occur, but it probably will cost you a head-to-head matchup at some point. So it's almost a reason when in doubt to leave him off a head-to-head matchup maybe in the future. Race, he was running really strong early. Harvick looked like he was getting up there as well. They had that incident on pit left, which helped your head-to-head matchup. I think Dillon had a strong car either way. I liked him also over Christopher Bell, and that he beat him by 1 spot. Strong, speaking of rookies like Reddick. basically 24th to like 3rd or 2nd within a few laps on fire. Andy, I'll bring you in. What were some of your takeaways? I mean, one thing, all caution. I think that'll be different this week at 10 straight race in a row where the leader just basically drove away with it like the last 50. Diplomatic. Andy, what were some of your takeaways? How did you do this past Sunday at Homestead, Miami?
Oh, I did great. Swept the board 3-0, and my fine for 3 laps. Look back. I had Brad over Logano. Whether that was a good handicap or not, because Brad finished, I think, 12th. And so you think, okay, if Logano did or Bell, and Dillon even had the late pit stop penalty, and he wasted no time flying forward, finished. This guy is one of these guys to really keep your eye on. There's a lot of value. I've been saying less cautions doesn't make for exciting racing, but it's much more predictable for us. So, there's nothing worse than when you're winning all your bets and then that caution comes. So a non-chaotic race seems to always go better for us gamblers.
Yeah, and there's something else I wanted to point out too. Denny Hamlin was the first driver this season to sweep all the stages. And that might sound, well, that's a tough thing to do, but 4 other drivers 1 and 2 and not won the race. And I was shocked that many finishes, because when a guy wins the first, obviously a pretty dominant car, so we've definitely had some random finishes, but Hamlin held on one. And once again, I mentioned last week that Gibbs Racing looked like they were with Kyle Busch, Hamlin, and Truex all running. So again, along with Harvick. Harvick had the trouble on pit row. I think that screwed him up. Once again, just never really in contention, even though he was favored at some sports mention. So a Gibbs driver is going to sweep all 3 stages and win the race. Hamlin would have been the 3rd that I would have taken to be the one to do so. I mean, we would have all Busch and Truex in every matchup and hope we were right on which one it was, and turned out it was Hamlin. So I for that team going forward. We've talked about Eric Jones being a potential sleeper in a lot of these intermediate speedways in the future, and he's that 4th part of that team. So he's a guy also I think could be a play on. Blaney's been a play on for. He continues to run really well, and that transitions into Talladega where he's done well and has a win actually. Another takeaway for me was that Hendrick once again was not as dominant as they've been maybe a month ago, and I'm starting to think maybe coming out of the shutdown, Hendrick just had some kind of edge. The other teams have caught up because Penske and Gibbs have looked better to me. And you have to be so careful overreacting to early results. And I feel like I've had Alex Bowman on my radar for weeks now because he looked so good at California, the 2-miler back in March. So good behind Harvick in that first Darlington race. But yeah, great call, Andy, because he hasn't even been top 10, I don't believe, in any other race since that Darlington comeback.
Steve, if I could just jump in, I got to give credit to Rocky. Rocky and I talked about Bowman. I was a Bowman fan. And this is one of the nice things about being a part of a show like this is, in the past, I have not been able to bounce a lot of my opinion off of other people. But since doing this show, I'm able to text every day. He was saying he didn't really believe in Bowman. And after he said that, I thought that's kind of weird. So I went and looked at the results, and he was absolutely right. And so I kind of joined Rocky with kind of fading Bowman, and we've been paid for it. So the other thing, I got to say, opportunity with Denny Hamlin. Hamlin was great without his crew chief.
Yeah.
This was an obvious revenge race for getting his crew chief back. He was good without his crew chief. Yeah, look what he did with his normal crew chief. I regret not jumping on that angle because they much laid the smackdown on.
Yeah, Rob. We'll finish up here with Homestead, but Rocky, what are your thoughts on kind of you were definitely playing against Bowman several weeks ago. Andy and I were still big on him, and it was tough for me because I saw how well he ran at California. I saw how well he ran at Darlington. And even in some of those recent bad finishes, guys, don't forget he won a couple stages and won forget, it might have been one of the Charlotte races. I think he won 1 or 2 stages and still didn't finish top 10. So he'd had some speed. He just didn't have the results. But Rocky, what are your thoughts here going forward? Obviously, Talladega this weekend is a totally different type of track. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's important, even though they won't be back in Miami, for all the viewers to talk about in depth, because this is a 1.5-mile intermediate speedway that's very similar to other tracks they'll be running almost half the races on. So guys that ran well this past Sunday, next week we have Pocono. It'll be a couple weeks until we can use this data, but without practice times, it's very important to see how these cars are running on 1.5 miles. Rocky, right now, what is your thoughts as far as versus Hendrick? How are you looking at that in the future?
You still got to take it, track type, stuff like that. I'm not going to count Alex Bowman out of having another good run or so. I think he will, actually, just because of the team he's with. Penske's going to run well on certain tracks, better than Gibbs at certain tracks. Gibbs is going to run better than Hendrick at certain tracks. So you just gotta look at the track, look at the track type. But I was against Bowman for several races there, made a lot of money fading him, and be looking at that for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I was big on Bowman and Hendrick because they were faster than these other teams a month ago, and Bowman still wasn't getting it done. William Byron still wasn't getting it done. So yeah, I think you could say there's going to be some opportunities here in the future, because it looks to me like Gibbs and Penske have caught up on these intermediate tracks, and the one guy that still seems to be a heads and above the rest is Chase Elliott, though. He was in contention with Denny Hamlin. So he definitely seems to be at another level as far as those Hendrick drivers. You guys, before we leave Miami in the rearview mirror, we'll get to our Ricky Stenhouse Jr. award. And what a great guy to be talking about this week, because as we'll talk about Talladega, this is his track coming up, and you bet him every week. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Before we get to the Ricky Stenhouse Unforced Error Award for Miami Homestead, I want to remind all the viewers out there, this is the best time ever to get on board these two guys for the rest of the NASCAR season. We're going to give you a $200 discount for every pick and analysis here. You've missed a lot of winners. Hey, look, you missed Rocky's win. You missed Andy's 3-0 sweep. Combined 4-0 sweep this past Sunday. I mean, how many times have we come on the last month since we've been doing this show, and I said these guys went 5-1, 5-0, 4-0 last weekend. And I know I keep saying you feel like you missed out. And if you have sat and missed and waited, you've missed out week after week, and there's still 5 months to go. But now you've got incentive to do so. Get on board, $200 discount for the rest of the season. But you have a special promo code. It's not available on any website without this promo code, NASCAR 499. It sounds like a Talladega race, so it's very appropriate we're using it this week. NASCAR 499. That's our special race, and that's going to save you $200 off the rest of the NASCAR season. You go to WagerTalk.com for Andy Lang's package. You go to SportsMemo.com for Rocky Atkinson's package. Once again, must use promo code NASCAR 499, and you get a $200 discount off the regular price for the rest of NASCAR the next 5 months of best bets each and every week with analysis. 4-0 sweep this past Sunday. Don't wait any longer. That's the good news, is there's even more money to be made the next 5 months. Naki's picks, sportsmemo.com, Andy's picks. What is that promo code? NASCAR 499. All right, I don't have a lot of good nominees, but I'm going to throw out 2 really bad nominees. Hopefully you guys have something better. I'll start with the songs that delay went. I like to tape these races so I can go back and watch them a second. I always leave a couple extra hours. I had a feeling rain was coming, so I started all the way through The Simpsons, all the way through Family Guy, and I still barely got past stage 2 by the time my recording stopped. So I had to record the replay to review later for research that night. But weather was painful. I guess that's what you get when you move the race from November to June. Now this was supposed to be March initially. That would have been better. So it really wasn't NASCAR's fault, but it was just painful. The weather delays, really can't do much about that. And the other award, of course, is what happened there on pit row. I mean, it took the Benedetto out for the most part. And that was kind of a Stenhouse moment. Otherwise, I'll throw it to you, Rocky. I'll throw it to you first. You got a nominee or two for the unforced error, the Ricky Stenhouse unforced error of the race at Miami?
Yeah, I've got one that's probably going to be the winner of the year, actually. I was going to go with Austin Dillon, second week in a row. However, he had the pit road penalty, had the loose tire, He was in 7th place, had to start at the back of the pack. He was lightning fast, came back and beat DiBenedetto for us, beat Bell for us. But the one I've got to go with this week is Tyler Reddick. I did not realize what had happened during the race, but until the next day. What a great race he had, first off. However, he thought the race remaining. Reddick started apologizing. He said, "Sorry, guys," and he let off the throttle. His crew chief and his spotter start hollering, "Keep going, keep going." And it was silence. Reddick didn't say anything. Then all of a sudden, Tyler, great car, great stop. And his crew chief started hollering again. It's the last lap, dog.
Wow.
Tyler was to the lap. He did gun it. He did not lose a position. He finished in 4th still. But that has got to be one of the funniest moments of the year right there. Definitely a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. unforced error moment. Just a crazy moment, and I think we'll remember that. If you haven't seen it, I'll share it on my make sure you check the video out. I didn't realize it, but it was funny.
Yeah, Rocky, I actually was not aware of that, so I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm conflicted. I mean, you very well, other than that moment, you could very well race. I mean, he went from like 24th to like 3rd place in like place. So how many or two is, because that's a tough one. I mean, it's a moment right there, but then again, finishing 3rd or 4th and running top 5 all race is a very non-Stenhouse moment. So I'm conflicted on that one. Andy, what are your thoughts?
Next day either, and I'm so glad Rocky did, because I believe it was Mark that back in the day cost himself a win. He was in the lead, and he pulled into the pits forgetting. So it didn't cost him, but yes, the radio of him congratulating his team and his team yelling at him was an all-timer. I will go over some other nominees. And Trent in the YouTube brings up a great point that Tyler Reddick even wins, or he wins even when he loses. Have you ever seen his baby mama? And I have, and you're right. Tyler Reddick is a winner in the game of life. So a couple of, Eric Almirola came out of his pit stall and cut off about 9 cars. You talked about Logano and Harvick and DiBenedetto getting his. That was actually Kurt Busch's fault. I went back and looked at it several times. That was Kurt Busch trying to get ahead of everybody. He was the one that caused all that. Jimmy Johnson had a loose tether to his roof. Like, what are you guys doing? You've had all week. How do you have a loose tether to your roof? And you brought it up earlier, Steve, but if I could just give a little piece of advice to NASCAR, if there's lightning in the area, don't start the race. What are you doing, NASCAR? There's a lightning storm. We can all see it on TV. There's these huge storm clouds. Why would you start the in sports here in Indianapolis as an official? You never start a sporting event when there's lightning in the area. That's like a basic rule. Don't start it. And then they have multiple lightning delays. But Tyler Reddick is the easy win this week, and an early nominee for winner of the year. So,
yeah, I mean, really well could be nominee for the year, and it's going to be so weird to say a guy that finishes 3rd or 4th. It didn't actually cost him his positioning at all, like you said, because Hamlin had such a big lead at that point. But yeah, that's a great moment, and there really wasn't much else in that race. I'm glad you realized it was Kurt Busch. You realize I didn't give a guy specifically because I could still not figure out who was at fault there on pit road. So many cars, and that's another thing with so few cautions this year, guys. So many cars with these, especially with these competition cautions that they're having at the 20th lap. So many guys are on the lead cars on pit road at the same time. We've seen a lot of issues on pit road that have affected some of these drivers. And that's another reason it's so important to watch these races closely and take notes, because Logano was strong early in that run. I think he would have been a contender to win. Harvick usually is always great there. He was never in the running. I think that was a little bit misleading, and there's a reason why. But yeah, Tyler Reddick, thank you, Rocky, for bringing that up. I think he's an obvious winner this week. Tyler Reddick wins the Miami Homestead and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Unforced Error of the Race Award for quitting a lap too early despite running top 5. And it's actually remarkable he still finished top 5. That's pretty hard to do. He's that good. And like Andy said, he's a winner in life. He's able to quit a lap top 5. That's pretty talented. But yeah, keep in mind, he'd won 2 races there and finished 4th in Xfinity Series. His 3 starts the last 3 years. We'll see how he does at Dega this weekend. Totally different type of track, but these guys do have some experience there. Him and Christopher Bell both, who've been very good as rookies. Viewers, we're going to get to Talladega right now. We're going to get some free picks, some analysis. Don't forget, though, if you want the best bets every week, you use this promo code right now. You're not going to save $200, but you're going to make money for the next 5 months with best bets from Andy at WagerTalk.com and from Rocky at SportsMemo.com. And that promo code, again, is NASCAR499. Because that's the price for the rest of the NASCAR season, and that's a $200 discount off the normal rate. You missed a 4-0 sweep this past Sunday. I know you're kicking yourself if you didn't get on board after that 5-1 record a couple Sundays ago. 5-1 the first week we did this show. These guys had gone the night before. If you want to make some money, you need to get the best bets and play consistently every week. Yes, you missed a 4-0 sweep Sunday this past week, but you still have 5 months of best bets, and right now you can save $200 when you get them. And use promo code NASCAR499. You have until this Sunday. To use that promo code and get the rest of the season, the next 5 months, for $499. NASCAR499. WagerTalk.com for Andy. SportsMemo.com for Rocky. Speaking of Rocky, let's start with you, my man. What are you looking at Talladega? I'll let you guys explain it, but my 2 cents worth. I don't like these 2 tracks from a handicapping perspective. I'm sure you all agree. It's always ironic to me that the Super Bowl of racing is not only the first event of the year, but goes to Daytona, which is the most random track along with Talladega. And the results speak for themselves. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has a win at Dega. He's the best active driver. He's second in average finish behind Ryan Preece, who has 2 starts here. But all other drivers, well, actually, we'll leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at that. That's how random this track is. Our 2 active drivers right now with the best average finishes are Ryan Preece and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I'll throw it to you, Rocky. You can take it from there.
Yeah, Talladega is definitely a different animal. Talladega, Daytona, for several years, I would not release picks at these tracks. Most likely, you're going to see the big one. And by the big one, we mean the big crash. And it takes out about half the field. I did start releasing picks back in for Daytona and Talladega a couple years back. I've done actually well with it, but I've been lucky at times as well. You know, my drivers might get in a wreck, and one of them just happened to end up a little bit ahead of the other one on the track. They couldn't continue, but I won the head-to-head matchup because of where they ended up after the crash. So you have to be careful with Talladega. You know, you don't want to put a bunch of money on these if we do release some head-to-head matchups. This is a track you might want to take a week off, or if I have something, you know, I'm probably going to have 1 or 2 picks most likely. One guy I'm looking at is Joey Logano. Logano has 3 wins, 8 top 5 finishes, 10 top 10 finishes in his 22 races here. His average finish is 16.2 at this track. Now, normally that wouldn't be a real good average finish, but at Talladega or Daytona, 16.2 is actually pretty good. Over the past 2 years here, Logano has 1 win, 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s in those 4 races. Has an average finish of 5.3, which is the best among all active drivers. So I'm looking at Joey Logano to have coming off a bad race in Miami.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I want to point out is I totally agree about handicapping Talladega and Daytona. It's very random, yet you know, the law of averages, the skill does somewhat eventually come out ahead. There's certain drivers that run better here than others. Back in the day, of course, Earnhardt Jr., he gets into the Hall of Fame largely because he has a lot of wins on these 2 tracks. It padded his statistics a little bit. But keep in mind, at that same time, Michael Waltrip was winning a lot of races, and he couldn't even finish top 15 on any other track on the circuit at the time. Now, you know, at that point, Childress had a tactical advantage, I think, with their setups. I'm not sure cars have that as much anymore. But they were still teammates that knew how to run here, could work together. And this is the one track. I always like to look at teams in general. You've heard me talk a lot about that on the show already with, you know, Homestead. We're talking about Gibbs and Penske looking strong and Hendrick starting to fade a bit. But it's more important than ever here on the 2 super speedways drafting and teammates can work together and help push each other. And I don't think it's a coincidence right now when you look at the odds, at least one sportsbook I'm looking at, of the top 5 favorites right now, it's Logano, Keselowski, and then Blaney's 5th. So 3 of the 5 favorites are the Penske drivers. They've all done well here. They've all won on these types of tracks, and they can work together. So I do think you somewhat want to stack, maybe if you're looking to do it fantasy-wise, you want to try to stack teammates. If you're doing head-to-head matchups, it's something to keep in mind as well. You have to be cautious, of course, because you don't want to have 2 or 3 times the exposure on one team and then it goes sour because of a big wreck. But it's random in ways, yet it's still handicapable in ways as well. And Andy, I'll get your thoughts on that and maybe someone you're looking at this weekend.
I am not going to have any paid plays. I'm going to have fun with it. I will say this. I haven't seen this prop released. Rocky mentioned the big one, and we all know that happens at Daytona and Talladega. There's been a prop that me and my buddies used to just crush on restrictor plate races. And there would be a prop about over under how many cautions. And if you look, there's actually not a lot of cautions. There's just like 1 or 2 massive cautions. So we used to play the under on cautions every restrictor plate race, and it was a great bet. I have not seen that bet released. I don't know if it's going to be released this week, but that would be a good one. I do have I do have a couple stats. Here's one. This might be the stat of the year. This one is going to blow your mind. Eric Almirola, 7 straight top 10 finishes at Talladega. I don't even know how that's possible. And of all the drivers, it's Eric Almirola. Amazing. Logano is the only driver to average a top 10 finish in the last 4 races here. William Byron has never finished inside the top 20 at this track. And poor Eric Jones. Average finish in the last 6 races here is 28.2. The guy can't catch a break. And Truex, bad luck here. His average finish last 6 races, 25.5. So some random tidbits of information. I don't think it means a thing going into this race. But if you want to ride the hot hand, it's Eric Almirola.
Yeah, I think there are certain drivers, as I mentioned, that do better. I mean, Keselowski has 5 wins at Talladega, so obviously he does better than the average driver here. You get to a point you don't win. Stenhouse has a win, and actually he runs well here, so I can't say that's random. But I think a guy like Stenhouse, though, is good to talk about because he's the Michael Waltrip of our era right now. He can't even finish top 15 on most tracks, and he has been consistently top 20 in almost every start here. I think 10 out of 13 he's been top 20, and then like at least maybe 8 out of 13 he's been top 10. So there is something to be said about staying out of trouble, which is ironic because Stenhouse finds trouble more than anybody. That's why we have an award named after him. As a contrarian handicapper in general, like in the NFL and other sports, when I see a guy like Logano, as he mentions, the only guy that has 4 top 10s, you feel like the due factor comes in, that he's due to have an off race. Yet the fact that Keselowski, his teammate, is so strong, there again, it's not a total fluke. But we talk about that every race. These last few races have been very non-eventful at the end, and we haven't had the randomness, as you said, Andy, that you don't like as a handicapper. You get that more here at Talladega, yet the cream still rises to the top. And Keselowski and Logano historically have been the guys to beat here, and that's why they're the pre-race favorites. But they're at 8-1. They'd be 4-1 at another track because there's that uncertainty. The odds makers have priced in a 50% premium of uncertainty. Basically, the odds are double what they would be. Rocky, what's another factor or driver that you're looking at this week? Maybe someone that's fun a little bit on. We talk about sleepers. I think almost any of these guys could be sleepers because there again, almost everybody is double digits this week as far as drivers on the odds.
Yeah, I have to agree with you with Keselowski there. He's got 5 wins, 7 top 5s, 11 top 10 finishes in 22 races here. Average finish of 16 at this track. Another guy I'm looking at is Chase Elliott. Elliott has 1 win, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s in 8 races here. His average finish is 13.3 at this track. Chase has 1 win, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s the past 2 years with an average finish of 10.8 over those 4 races.
Yeah, I like looking at the top 10s more than ever on this track probably because, like you said, Rocky, with the average finish, you could finish first and 32nd, and your average finish is right in the middle of the pack there around 16 or so, and that's pretty good for this track. And there's always going to be guys that are running well that get taken out, but certain guys are in the running more than others. And I think the top 10 is probably the best way to look at that. Top 20 is not a bad way to look at it as well. Stenhouse 10 out of 13, Chase Elliott 6 out of 8 top 20s, but Stenhouse 8 out of 13 top 10s, Elliott 4 out of 8 top 10s. So, they've been over 50% of the time they're in the mix, and that's all you can hope for. I mean, all I want right now, if you could tell me right now what drivers will be in the top 10, you could make some money on this race, because it really. And you could watch this, the last lap of this race, you're not going to know who's going to win this. There's 4 or 5 cars on the last lap that can still win. And to go back to Andy's point about the cautions, and Andy, I just looked, I do see some props up. I don't see the caution prop yet. I'd be a little nervous about that in recent years, though, because of the overtime rules. We can get 3 or 4 extra cautions now because of the restarts. And that's something that wasn't possible 5-10 years ago. It's almost a certainty. If anybody can find a bet, will there be a caution in the last 5 laps? Play that heavy. That's an automatic winner. I mean, these guys, they try to play safe. They end up wrecking each other with 3 to go. And then, of course, what happens is cautions breed cautions. And every restart, we have 3 more wrecks and 3 more restarts because the guys are jockeying for position. But it's important for a guy to be in the top 10 with a few laps to go, because that gives him a chance to win. Chase Elliott, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., those are guys. Eric Almirola, as Andy mentions, another guy that's been very consistent here. My contrarian nature tells me they're all due for bad run-ins, but I've been using that angle every year, and they keep having good run-ins, so maybe that doesn't work. Andy, maybe what's one more guy or maybe a long shot that you're looking at, Andy?
Well, I texted Rocky earlier, and I said I want to bounce this crazy betting strategy that I have off of you guys. So I'm 14-5 in my last 19 picks. 6 winning races in a row, and on the season I'm hitting 70%. 70%, generally, I think you guys would agree, is pretty hard to maintain over the course of the year. So on average, you would say I'm due for a bad week. So
I know where you're going with this.
My theory is I handicap this race like I normally handicap, and I make my picks, and then we all bet the opposite. Because the odds say that my luck is not going to continue on this track. So that was my goofy, random, weird theory to play against.
But see, I'll counter that, Andy, because I'm going to say there's not, maybe you're a 65% capper that's hitting 70, so there's not a huge difference there. And I'm not so sure your luck has been the reason you've been hitting 70%, because all 3 of us know what we're doing with NASCAR, and it's a very wild, wild west sport. So these lines sometimes aren't as sharp as other sports. So, yeah, 70% for the season might be tough, but I'm telling you right now, it's not out of the woodwork for NASCAR, because you guys know what you're doing and you're hitting these numbers before they move. I thought where you're going with that was you're going to make like 30 plays this week, so you can get it back down to like 55% and then not worry the rest of the year. That's where I thought you were going with it. That'd be my strategy. Just bet every matchup, and lose 20 units, and then you're set for the rest of the year. Your
Johnny,
money, not mine.
Johnny would kill me if I did that. You guys would be down a host or down a panel person next week if I did that. Honestly, if you're gonna make a bet, I'm just glancing over the lines. I see Ryan Blaney at plus 115 over Denny Hamlin. Anybody at plus money, that's good value on a track like this. So.
By the way, I will give a play against driver, and you guys feel free to do it as well. And you kind of mentioned Truex Jr. earlier, I think. He just, he's as good as anybody on all the other tracks. And we have enough races now, at least at Dega. I mean, really both Daytona and Dega, where he just hasn't been in contention. The guy's got 2 top 5 finishes and 30 starts at Talladega. So it's just something about that just tells me this guy's legitimately. That's just Dega alone. And actually, I'll pull up the Daytona and Dega races. I'm curious what he has there. I didn't look at this earlier. 60 starts at Daytona and Dega combined. He has 4 top 5s in 60 starts. So I'll be looking to play against Truex Jr. The problem is the odds makers are looking at the same thing we are. And I looked at DraftKings right now. They got about 10 matchups up, and I don't see a Truex matchup, which is very unusual. And that's another place, Andy, I thought they might have the caution prop, and I didn't see it yet, but they might have it by this weekend. I'm glancing at some other books, so, and I don't see any Truex props right now. So
I don't see any either.
The odds makers know what they're doing, and that's why it makes it difficult. Even on a track like this, They've got Boyer, by the way, at Pick'em against Stenhouse Jr. That's one guy, and Rocky, maybe you're going to mention him, but Boyer's actually run well on these tracks. He's led a lot of laps, and he's kind of a Stenhouse, as Andy says every week. He's one of those hit or miss guys. So it just shows you what we're dealing with here. We got Stenhouse, Boyer, and Almirola head-to-head against each other at Pick'em prices, and they're all very good here.
Have fun betting on Ricky Stenhouse against Clint Boyer. Your blood pressure is going to go through the roof watching that unfold.
Definitely two of the most entertaining drivers. Boyer's probably my favorite overall as far as on and off the track. And yeah, I mean, Newman's head-to-head with Eric Jones at Pick'em. That's a great matchup because keep in mind, Ryan Newman should have won Daytona, and that's another race that was decided on the last lap. He was the best car. Hamlin found a way to win. Newman ends up in the hospital and out of racing for a few months. I'd be a little careful with Newman this week.
I actually have an opinion on this one.
That's a good one to talk about.
Okay, I'm going to go the other way. Newman, who's obviously not scared of anything. I mean, the fact that he's even racing and racing competitively is incredible. I think he's going to play it safe. There's two big-time strategies when you're doing these restrictor plate races. One is get out front and get away from all the carnage. One is stand back and hope you don't get caught up in it. Newman, I can see staying in the back and being cautious. Who could blame him? If he avoids a couple of the big ones, I mean, this is a track where you can run in 30th place the whole race and finish 5th. It's also a random track where you can be involved in a wreck, but if your car's somewhat drivable, you can limp your way to a 14th place finish. I actually think that Eric Jones is going to try and get himself in the mix. I mean, what a bummer last week for him. He was running top 10 and had I think it was a tire go down, ended up outside the top 15. I could see him getting involved in the mix and getting involved in one of those wrecks. And Newman, KG veteran, coming off a big accident, playing it cautious. It could work out in Newman's favor. I actually kind of like Ryan Newman just as a default. He's not going to be involved in those wrecks.
Yeah, and I always say, every week how I don't look a lot at qualifying. When I love practice times. One thing I've really missed this year is not having my practice data for these other tracks. I feel like I've been handcuffed. This is one track in which I never liked handicapping because the practice data never mattered. So all you have to look at is past track history, and then you throw in the randomness factor. It's very difficult. But there's an angle I want to throw out to you guys real quick, and this came on my radar about a decade ago when Mark Martin was wrapping up his career. It was either an interview or somewhere I heard this, and he was running cautious, and I started following that. And Martin was very cautious on these types of tracks, and that's exactly what came to mind for Newman. And I want to throw it out too for Jimmy Johnson. Johnson has 5 career wins at Daytona and Talladega, 2 at Talladega, 3 at Daytona. He has been very good on these tracks at times. He knows how to run on these tracks. These guys might not admit it. They might not even know what's in their head, but you really have to, Johnson is going in here thinking, hey, look, my career's almost done. Let me just try to get out without ending up in the hospital like Ryan Newman did a few months ago. And sometimes, though, like Andy said, running cautious isn't a bad thing because the worst place to be is in the 20s in this race because that's where the accidents happen. If you're in the very back, you can avoid them. If you're in the very front, you obviously avoid them. So it'll be interesting to see how Johnson runs this race. And just, we once again don't have qualifying, but you find some value sometimes with guys starting way back in the field. The problem with this race is all the guys starting way back in the field are going to be terrible drivers because it's going to be based on owner points. So guys like Johnson and stuff will be starting, anywhere from like 1st to 15th. I think he's in the top 12 still, so he'll be anywhere from 1st to 12th. If not, he'll be in the middle of the pack. The guys that we really have to watch are those mid-tier drivers who have been decent this year, but going to be starting 13 through 26 based on owner points because those are the guys most likely to be in an accident. That's maybe one handicapping factor you can use. Rocky, before we get to some free picks, head-to-head matchups, give me your final thoughts on Dega, maybe a play-on, play-against, long shot, whatever you're looking at.
Well, a lot of the drivers will immediately go back to the back of the pack just to run at the back, try to stay out of trouble for quite some time. I think Jimmy Johnson is one of those guys that will do that this weekend. So definitely, I like your angle on that for sure. We've mentioned Ricky Stenhouse Jr. That's my long shot this week. The odds I saw was 22-1. He has 1 win here, 5 top 5s, 8 top 10 finishes in 13 races. He's not one that's going to stay at the back of the pack. He's going to be trying to get to the front as fast as possible. His average finish is 11.6 at this track, which you said, like you said, it was second best among all drivers, with Ryan Preece being ahead of him a little bit. Stenhouse has 3 top 10 finishes, including 2 top 5s the past 2 years here at Talladega. Average finish of 10.5. I think it's fairly good value. He's either going to wreck out or he's going to be in the top 5 for sure at this track.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how well he's run consistently, considering how dangerous he is as a driver as far as wrecking at any point, including lap 1. And you just feel like he's due for an off run. But if you do Daytona and Talladega combined, it's not just Dega. He also has a win at Daytona. He has actually 2 wins combined, but he's been top 20 in 20 of his 29 restrictor plate starts. I mean, that's incredible. And then he's been 11th times he's been top 10. Clint Boyer, by the way, he's been top 20, 38 out of 57. You know, we talked about him. One other guy I'll throw out real quick that's in the top 6. By the way, the top 2 drivers active at Talladega and Daytona combined, John Hunter Nemechek, 1 start at Daytona this year, finished 11th. So he has the best average finish of any driver in this race at both tracks. He hasn't even run yet as a Cup driver at Talladega, though. Justin Haley has 3 starts. I'm not even sure that statistic. I think it might be an error in the data I'm looking at. But Stenhouse Jr. is 3rd overall at both tracks combined, and you got Clint Boyer, but then Kevin Harvick 5th at the 2 tracks combined, and that's with 76 starts. And then right after that, Kurt Busch at 6 are sleepers, but we haven't talked about him yet. They've done very well. And Harvick has had some bad runs in recent races. He's a random track. We love to play the bounce back angle. Harvick's not run well in tracks which he could have. Wouldn't it be ironic if he bounces back on a random track here? So maybe take a look at Harvick. That's kind of my gut feel call. I'll say that's my gut call because you really can't handicap this race on anything else. Andy, I'm going to get to a head-to-head matchup, but I want to let the viewers out there know these guys might not have 5% plays going this week, but I want everyone to get on board. So there's a reason the promo code is a season discount. We did this on purpose because this isn't necessarily the week you're going to make several $100s with 5 or 6 head-to-head matchups. Andy just said he might not even have one this week. By the way, he went 3-0 last Sunday and hit his first ever 5% play. I think that's enough to pad your bankroll for a couple weeks. So he doesn't need to force anything. He's hitting 70% of the season. Rocky, meanwhile, he entered last week on an 18-4 all-sports run and went 0-2. He bounced back with a 1-0 sweep. So he's now 19-6 the past few months in all sports since the shutdown began. He doesn't need to force more than 1 or 2 plays. He probably will have 1 or 2 matchups. But take the big picture outlook here. You've got 5 months of NASCAR left. If you wait until next week when these guys have multiple best bets, you're going to be paying $6.99 for the season. If you get on board right now, you're paying $4.99. So even if you only have maybe 1 matchup this week, you're still making $200 on the blind just by using the promo code. So go right now to WagerTalk.com for Andy Lang's package. Go to SportsMemo.com for Rocky Atkinson's package. Use promo code NASCAR49. NASCAR, that's the best of NASCAR. Andy, give me a head here for Talladega.
If I'm forced, I think Eric's bad luck after bad luck after bad luck. His car's not set up. It's a flat tire. It's always something with. This guy, and sometimes you gotta just bet against a guy who's just running horrible right now through no fault of his own. So I think when a guy's down, unfortunately, you got to bet against him. I like the strategy of supporting Newman, who's going to be playing it safe. So I think my free play is Ryan Newman over Eric Jones.
Yeah, Newman makes me nervous, as I said earlier, if he's got the cautious, concern after crashing. But then again, that might work to his advantage. So I like where you're going with that. And we know he knows how to run well in these tracks. He should have won Daytona earlier this year. Rocky, you've got about a minute left. I'll throw it over to you. What's your head-to-head matchup for Talladega this week, free here on the show?
All right, I'm going to go with Austin Dillon minus. He's been running very well lately. His average finish 19.4 at this track. William Byron has no wins, no top 5 finishes, no top 10 finishes in his 4 races here at Talladega. Beat the Stenhouse. A lot of run over by free.
Rocky, do it on tracks. I think that sometimes is blown out of the run rates, and that's how Texas. That was the Waltrip Earnhardt team back in the day that used to dominate. So I think Austin Dillon could be asleep. We all liked him this past week. He's running well. Just had a new baby. Maybe he'll run at the back though. He's concerned about that. See if the Newman factor pays off for Dillon as well. Show as always, viewers. NASCAR 4-9. $200 discount for the NASCAR season for both Rocky and Andy. Go to